Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The Friday night air was heavy with the smell of garlic bread and simmering marinara. I just finished setting the table. 2 plates, wine glasses, candles flickering softly on the kitchen counter. It had been weeks since Lila and I shared a proper dinner, and tonight, I was determined to remind us what we once had. But the chair across from me stayed empty. I glanced at the clock. 9:30. She was supposed to be home 2 hours ago. I dialed her once, twice, but it went straight to voicemail. By the third attempt, frustration gnawed at my stomach. When the door finally creaked open, she walked in laughing, phone in hand, hair slightly tousled, cheeks glowing with the kind of warmth that didn't come from traffic delays. She froze when she saw the candles and the untouched plates. "Oh," she muttered, her laughter vanishing like a puff of smoke. "I forgot you wanted dinner tonight. Stephen needed me to help him with something." There it was again. Stephen. Always Stephen. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Lila, do you realize this is the 3rd time this week you've ditched our plans for him?" She sighed, tossing her purse onto the couch. "Drew, please. Don't start this again. Stephen is my best friend. You know that. He's been there for me since college." "Best friend," I snapped. "Or something else." Her eyes narrowed, defensive. "You're being ridiculous. You've always been so insecure about him." Insecure. The word cut deeper than she realized. I wasn't insecure. I was observant. I'd seen the way she texted him late at night, smiling at her screen as if he held her entire world in his hands. I'd noticed how her excuses always led back to him, how her promises to me were always postponed, while his requests were granted instantly. That night, she ate a few bites of food in silence, scrolling on her phone under the table. I watched her, the woman I thought I knew, and realized something had shifted between us. We weren't partners anymore. I was just background noise to her double life. And then came the final straw. The next morning, as I was pouring coffee, her phone buzzed on the counter. She reached for it, but not before my eyes caught the words lighting up the screen. "I'll come over tonight. Don't worry, he won't suspect anything." From Stephen. The blood drained from my face. I didn't say a word. I didn't explode or demand answers. I simply watched as she grabbed her phone and walked into the bedroom, pretending she hadn't seen me notice. Later that evening, she texted me herself. Casual, almost careless. "I'll be staying at Stephen's for a few days. Don't stress. You know he's just a friend. Trust me." Trust. The word felt like poison. I replied with only 2 words. "Have fun." But inside, my resolve hardened. She thought I'd sit quietly while she played me for a fool. She thought she could walk out, live another life, and come back to me as if nothing had changed. She had no idea what was coming. That night, I logged into the router and reset the Wi-Fi password. It wasn't about pettiness. It was about control. She lived online. Without it, she'd suffocate. Then I gathered her unopened mail, credit card bills, beauty packages, magazines, and shipped them straight to her parents' house. Every letter would scream the truth. She didn't belong here anymore. But the final part of my plan wasn't physical. It was psychological. I wasn't going to yell, beg, or confront. No, my revenge would be colder, sharper. I would let her walk through that door expecting her comfort zone, only to find it dismantled, stripped away piece by piece until she realized she'd lost far more than she ever imagined. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm. Because betrayal may burn, but revenge, it freezes. And I was just getting started. 7 days passed. 7 long, deliberate days where I barely spoke to Lila except through short, dismissive texts. She thought she was in control, sneaking around, living her secret life with Stephen. But what she didn't realize was that control had already shifted. I used those days wisely. I moved her favorite throw blanket, the one she always wrapped herself in while editing photos, into the storage closet. I cleared her shelf in the bathroom, leaving the counter spotless, cold. I unsubscribed her streaming accounts from the television. Even the smallest details, the coffee brand she liked, the snacks she bought, disappeared from the kitchen. By the time she decided to come home, our apartment was no longer our apartment. It was mine. Friday evening arrived. I heard the familiar jingle of her keys outside the door. She swung it open with the confidence of someone who believed nothing had changed. Rolling her suitcase behind her, she called out cheerfully, "Drew, I'm back." Her voice echoed through the empty air. The candles were gone. The flowers she liked to keep by the window had been thrown out. The living room was rearranged, cleaner, sharper, stripped of softness. "Drew," she called again, hesitation creeping into her tone. She tried her phone, frowned, then muttered under her breath, "Wi-Fi's out again?" "Ugh." I watched from the hallway, arms crossed, as she fumbled with her phone, confused. Her eyes scanned the room, and I could see the realization dawning. Something was wrong. Finally, she noticed me leaning against the doorway. "Hey, babe," she said carefully, as if she could smooth over everything with her usual charm. "Steven just needed a little help with some things, but I'm back now. What's for dinner?" I raised an eyebrow. "You were gone a week, Lila. That's not just helping with some things." Her smile faltered. "Oh, come on, don't start. You know how close Steven and I are. We've been friends forever. You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Am I?" I stepped closer, my voice steady, deliberate. "Then why did he text you that I wouldn't suspect anything?" Her face drained of color. For the first time, she didn't have a ready excuse. She opened her mouth, closed it, then forced a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "You must have misunderstood. He was joking." "Joking?" I repeated coldly. "Right. Just like you were joking when you told me not to be insecure. Just like you were joking every time you brushed me off to run to him." The silence stretched. I let suffocate her. Finally, she snapped. "Fine. Yes, I stayed with him. But Drew, it's not what you think. We were just talking. You've been so distant lately, so wrapped up in your work. Steven listens to me in ways you don't anymore." Her words stung, but they weren't new. I'd already dissected them in my head 100 times during that week. Excuses dressed as confessions. "You're right," I said flatly. "I was working. Working so you could chase your little dreams without worrying about rent, without worrying about bills. But clearly, listening isn't what you wanted. You wanted someone else's arms." She blinked, stunned by the sharpness of my tone. For the first time, I think she realized I wasn't begging her to stay. "Drew, don't be like this. You know I love you." She reached for my arm, but I pulled back before her hand touched me. "No, Lila. You love convenience. You love attention. You love the thrill of being wanted by someone else while keeping me as your safety net. But you don't love me." Her lips trembled. "That's not true. It is." I cut in, my voice like steel. "And that's why things won't be going back to normal." Her eyes darted around the room, confusion turning to panic. She noticed the missing blanket, the empty bathroom shelf, the barren coffee table. Her breathing quickened. "Where's my stuff? Where are my things, Drew?" I smiled, calm, controlled. "Your mail is at your parents'. Your packages, too. As for the rest, consider it gone. I don't live with a liar. Not anymore." Her voice cracked, sharp and desperate. "You can't be serious. You can't just erase me like this." "Oh, I can," I said softly, leaning closer so she could hear every word. "And the best part? You don't even get the satisfaction of a screaming match or a dramatic fight. You get silence. You get to stand there and realize I'm not playing your game anymore." She stared at me, tears welling up in her eyes, but her pride wouldn't let them fall. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Steven cares about me. He'll be here for me when you're not." I let out a dark laugh. "Steven? The guy who whispers behind my back and uses you to fill his own ego? He's not your future, Lila. He's your downfall. And one day you'll see that." For a moment, she looked like she might collapse. Then, with shaking hands, she grabbed her suitcase and stormed toward the door. Before she slammed it shut, she turned back, eyes blazing. "You think you're punishing me, Drew? But you're only proving that you'll always be alone." I didn't flinch. I didn't answer. I simply locked the door behind her, letting the echo of her words dissolve into nothing. Alone? No. For the first time in months, I wasn't alone. I was free. But the real revenge wasn't finished. I knew she'd come crawling back again, once Steven grew tired of her, once the thrill faded. And when she did, I would be ready with the final move that would leave her shattered. This wasn't just about ending things. This was about making sure she understood exactly what she threw away. And that lesson was only just beginning. The apartment was quieter than I had ever known it to be. No half-finished coffee mugs left on the counter. No piles of clothes on the couch. No faint sound of her laughter filling the space. For most people, that emptiness would sting. But for me, it was liberation. I woke the next morning with a clear mind. No unanswered texts to obsess over. No gnawing suspicion eating at my chest. Just silence and clarity. For the first time in months, I made breakfast for myself. Not two. I went for a run, headphones blaring, every stride lighter than the last. It was as though I'd been carrying a heavy chain around my neck. And finally, it had fallen away. But the peace didn't last long. By Monday evening, my phone lit up with Lila's name. Dozens of messages filled the screen. Drew, I didn't mean it the way it came out. Please let me come back and explain. Stephen's place isn't what I thought it would be. I need you. I scrolled through them without replying, each one painting a clearer picture. The pedestal she had put Stephen on was crumbling faster than I expected. By Wednesday, she was calling nonstop. Voicemails poured in, her voice cracking with desperation. Drew, please, pick up. I made a mistake. He's not you. No one will ever be you. Just give me one more chance. I listened to one, just long enough to catch the tremble in her voice, then deleted the rest. Revenge wasn't about shouting or gloating. It was about silence, about letting her words bounce back against walls that would never answer. Still, I wasn't satisfied with just ignoring her. That was too easy. She needed to feel the weight of her betrayal in every part of her life. I knew she depended on me more than she realized. Her photography career wasn't thriving. It was a hobby I had been subsidizing. Without my financial support, she'd be struggling. Without the apartment, she'd be back under her parents' roof, the very place she swore she'd never return to. So, when her messages turned from pleading to demanding, I decided to strike the final blow. One evening, after another round of unanswered calls, I sent her a single message. Lila, I wish you the best. But this chapter is over. Don't come back here. It's not your home anymore. No anger. No insults. Just finality. She responded instantly, a storm of denial. You don't mean that. You're just hurt. I'll be at the apartment tomorrow. We need to talk. But the next day, when she showed up, suitcase in hand, she couldn't even get inside. Her key no longer worked. She pounded on the door, calling my name, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. Drew, open this door. We can fix this. Don't do this to me. I stood silently in the kitchen, sipping coffee, listening to her voice fade against the locked door. Each desperate knock was music, a reminder that she no longer had power over me. Finally, when she realized I wasn't going to respond, she left. Her footsteps retreated down the hall, echoing like a sad song. I thought that might be the end of it, but it wasn't. A few days later, mutual friends started reaching out. Hey, man, Lila says you overreacted. She's telling people you lock her out for no reason. What's going on? I smiled bitterly. Of course she'd try to rewrite the story. Cheaters always do. But this time, the truth was on my side. I didn't expose her with screenshots or public drama. That would have been too easy. Instead, I calmly told them. Ask her why she was living with Stephen instead of me. Ask her who she was texting at midnight. The silence that followed from those friends was all the confirmation I needed. Her carefully crafted image of being the sweet, loyal girlfriend was cracking, and she knew it. By the end of the week, she came back one last time, standing outside the building with tears streaming down her face. I watched from the window as she shouted up at my apartment. Drew, please. I don't want him. I want you. Don't throw this away. For a moment, a flicker of pity touched me. We had shared memories, dreams, and love once. But then I remembered the way she laughed when she came home late, the lies she fed me, the betrayal hidden behind every trust me. So I closed the blinds and let her cries fade into the night. That was the difference between us. I had been loyal, patient, forgiving. She had been reckless, selfish, and deceitful. And now, she would live with the consequences. Because the harshest revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's indifference. It's letting someone taste the bitter reality of losing everything they took for granted. Lila had gambled our future for a fling, and she lost. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to prove anything. The silence, the locked doors, the absence of me, that was revenge enough. And I could already tell it was destroying her. Weeks passed. The storm that was Lila's return attempts eventually quieted. She stopped showing up at the door. The constant messages slowed, then ceased altogether. For the first time in a long time, my apartment, My life was steady again. But betrayal has a way of lingering. Every time I saw her name pop up on social media, every time mutual friends mentioned her, I felt a flicker of anger. Not because I missed her, but because I remembered how easily she had tried to replace me while keeping me as her safety net. Then, one evening, I got a message from an old friend of hers. "Drew, you should know, Lila and Steven aren't doing well. He's been ignoring her. Word is, he's seeing someone else." I almost laughed. The irony was sharp. She had burned down our relationship for him, only to be discarded just as carelessly. It wasn't surprising. Steven had always struck me as the kind of man who thrived on stealing, not building. He never wanted Lila for forever. He wanted her for conquest. And now, she was left with nothing. That was when I decided to deliver the final reminder of what she had lost. Not out of cruelty, but because sometimes people only learn when the mirror is held up to their face. I wrote her one last letter, handwritten, not digital, so she couldn't twist or screenshot it. It wasn't angry, nor was it pleading. It was cold, factual, and final. "Lila, you once told me I was the kind of man girls dream of, but you chose a nightmare instead. You walked away from loyalty, stability, and love for a thrill that lasted barely weeks. And now you want to crawl back, but the truth is, there's nothing left for you here. You don't get to treat love like a revolving door. Not with me. I won't expose you. I won't shout about what you did. The silence you're hearing from me, that's my closure. Live with it. Learn from it. Drew." I mailed it to her parents' house, the same place I had redirected all her belongings weeks earlier. A few days later, I heard from a mutual friend that she had read it at the dinner table, her hands trembling, her face pale. She hadn't cried in front of them, but the silence in the room spoke volumes. Even her parents, who once adored me, had realized the gravity of what she had thrown away. From that point forward, she stopped trying. No more texts, no more late-night calls, no more appearances at my building. She faded from my life, leaving behind nothing but memories that no longer hurt. They simply reminded me of the man I refused to be again. And as for me, I moved forward, my days filled with new routines. I focused on my career, threw myself into projects I had once postponed for her. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in months. Slowly, I started smiling again, not because I wanted to prove anything to Lila, but because I had finally reclaimed myself. The biggest lesson I learned was this: betrayal doesn't end with the act itself. It ends with how you respond. Some people scream, some beg, some break apart completely. I chose differently. I chose to stay calm, to reclaim my space, to let silence and distance become my sharpest weapons. The truth was, Lila's betrayal had already destroyed her long before my revenge took shape. She was left scrambling, humiliated, exposed, while I stood stronger than before. Months later, at a mutual friend's gathering, I saw her again for the first time. She was standing off to the side, clutching a glass of water, her smile tight and fragile. Steven wasn't with her. She looked thinner, more tired, her energy dulled. When her eyes met mine, she froze. For a moment, I saw recognition, regret, maybe even longing, but I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. I simply nodded politely, turned, and walked away to join the group I had been laughing with. That small act, walking away without a word, was the final nail in the coffin. It showed her that she no longer had power over me. And as I left the gathering later that night, I felt lighter than ever. Revenge doesn't always need explosions or grand scenes. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is quiet, calculated, and unforgettable. Lila had gambled with love, thinking she could have me waiting in the shadows while she played with fire. But when she came back, expecting normalcy, all she found was silence. And silence, in the end, was the loudest answer I could have ever given.